Welcome to Q&A practice. We'll get started with the plaintiff attorney. Ready? Here we go. Do you recall what you wore for the decoy operation? Yes. What were you wearing? I was wearing a gray jacket, black shirt, blue jeans, black shoes, and a watch. And it's what you're wearing right now? Yes. And you have short hair today. Was your hair short on the day of the decoy operation? Yes. Did you have any facial hair during the decoy operation? No. Do you have any facial hair today? No. And aside from your watch, did you wear any other jewelry? No, I didn't. During the decoy operation, did you go to the 7-Eleven located at 2115 East Rose Boulevard in the city of West Hills? Yes. Do you recall what time you arrived? I do not remember. Was it morning, midday, evening? It was mid-afternoon. Now, when you arrived at that location, did you enter the store? Yes. To your knowledge, did any of the investigators enter the store before you? Yes. Do you remember the person's name? I do not remember. Was it a male or a female? Male. Now, he entered the store first, and then you entered the store. Yes. When you entered the store, where did you go? I went to where they held the beer. And what did you do when you got there? I opened up the door and grabbed a 18-pack of Bud Light. I'm going to ask you to face the judge when you answer so he can hear. Okay, he's the important one. I'm doing fine. I'll let you know if I don't hear you. So you got an 18-pack of Bud Light, and then what did you do? I took it over the counter. Did you have to wait in line? No. Was there a clerk behind the counter? Yes. Was it a male or a female? Female. And when you got up to the counter, what happened? I set the 18-pack of Bud Light down, and then what happened? She asked for my ID, and what did you do? I gave her my ID. Where was your ID before you? It was in my pocket. Was it in any kind of wallet? No. Do you have your ID with you here today? Yes. Could I please have it? Or actually, could you please show it to the judge? All right, 2 for identification is a color photocopy of the California driver's license that I hold in my hand. The only change to the photocopy are that the driver's license number, the street address, city, state, and zip code have been whited over. In all other respects, the actual and the copy are the same. That's fine. And what is the ID that you showed to the clerk? Yes. And is that your true and correct ID? Yes. And does it state your correct date of birth as May 4th, 1986? Yes. Did you physically hand it to the clerk? Yes. And she took it in her hand? Yes. And then what happened? Then she swiped it in her computer. And then what happened? Then she entered a couple buttons on the computer. And then what happened? Then she made the purchase. Okay, she gave you back your ID? Yes. And she told you how much the beer was? Yes. And what happened next? I then went to go back to the car where the rest of the investigators were. Okay, did you pay for the beer? Yes. When you left the store, were you carrying anything? The 18-pack of Bud Light. At any time prior to leaving the store, did the clerk ask you how old you were? No. Did she ask you your age? No. Did she ask you any age-related questions? No. When you got outside, where did you go? Back to the investigator's car. And what did you do when you got there? I showed them that I made the purchase, and then what happened? Next, they went into the store. When they entered the store, did you remain in the car? Yes. And then at some point, were you called back into the store? Yes. When you re-entered the store, where did you go? To the counter. And what happened when you got to the counter? They asked me to identify who sold the alcohol to me. And did you identify that person? Yes. How did you identify that person? I pointed to them and said, this is the person. And was it in fact the person that had sold you the alcohol? Yes. I've got a document I'd like to get marked next in order. 3 for identification will be 2 photos. They are marked already A and B. Okay, I'm going to ask you to look at what's been marked as Exhibit 3, and specifically, can you look at Exhibit 3B, the lower photo? You can pick it up. Do you recognize that? Yes. And what is that? That's me pointing out who sold me the alcohol. And is that in fact the person who sold you the alcohol? Yes. And what is Exhibit 3A? It's the 18 pack of Bud Light that I purchased. On Exhibit 3B, the photo of you and the clerk. Is that how you were dressed when you went into the store and made the purchase of the beer? Yes, you can put that down. On March 21st, 2006, how tall were you? 5'10". And what are you today? 5'10". And how much did you weigh on March 21st, 2006? 155. And what do you weigh today? 155. Right, thank you. I have no further questions at this time. Mr. Morris, thank you. Prior to this particular operation, may I call you Mark? Yes. Prior to this particular operation, how long had you been a decoy with the department? I had only done it once before. Okay, and how is it that you became involved in the decoy program? I was asked by another cadet at my work to do a decoy operation. And where you work, you mentioned cadet. Can you please elaborate on that? I work at the Tustin Police Department as a cadet. Okay, and how long prior to this operation had you worked at the Tustin Police Department as a cadet? I started there May 4th, 2005. Okay, now during those 5 months or so of being a cadet, what exactly was your involvement? Objection, vague. Sustained. What do you do as a cadet? I enter in information into the computers, take traffic reports, and I'm able to fingerprint people. Okay, do you ever leave the office and go on such things as ride-alongs? Yes. Okay, have you ever received training, law enforcement training in this regard? I don't understand. As a cadet, have you received any law enforcement training? Yes. And what subjects have those included? Training in fingerprinting, entering in traffic collision information, how to arrest people? No. Okay, are you paid to be a cadet? Yes. Were you paid to be a decoy? Yes. How much were you paid? Objection, relevance, overruled. $10.50. $10.50 per hour. Yes. Does that amount vary? Does that amount vary, or is it always $10.50 per hour? It's that, unless overtime. Okay, are there any other benefits that you receive? I don't understand. Do you receive any other compensation for your participation as a decoy? Yes. And what does that consist of? A gift card to Target. Okay, and how often do you receive such a gift card? Is it dependent upon your ability to purchase alcohol? Objection, compound sentence. It's actually two completely different sentences. Sustained, rephrase, Mr. Morris. Yes, thank you. The issuance of a gift card, is it in any way related to your ability to purchase alcohol at any given location? No. When is it issued? For my participation. Okay. Do you shave, Mark? Yes. Have you shaved prior to this operation? Yes. How long before this operation had you shaved? Couple days. Okay. And how often do you shave normally? Every other day. Did you have any facial hair? No. Well, let me finish the question. At the time of the operation, no. And on this particular operation, how many places did you visit? I don't know. Would it refresh your recollection if I were to show you the report? I don't know. Well, why don't we give it a try? I'm going to object since he said he didn't know if that would refresh his recollection. I believe the person has to say it would refresh the recollection to look at a document. Try some different material. There's not a lot of Q&A on this one. So this will start with defense attorney. Ready? Here we go. All of the exceptions, at least where an unavailability are concerned, have both a necessity component and then some assurances of reliability. And because we're under the unavailability exceptions, the necessity interest presumably would be higher. And that's why we see a relaxation of the reliability requirement with a little bit more expansive tolerance for a period of time than, for example, under the excited utterance exception, where there's a lower presumptive necessity showing because the availability of the declarant doesn't matter. So with that focus, let's look first at necessity. Very, very low necessity here. The state originally sought this type of evidence because it had added a sexual assault allegation to the information that now has been dismissed. So no sexual assault is in play. And the state conceded in its opening statement that it can't answer the motive question, can't explain for a jury why, and won't attempt to prove motive here. So even where sexual assaults go into play, the original reasons the state offered in pursuing this bit of evidence originally as uncharged misconduct both have fallen away, and necessity is very low. Reliability, though, also is quite low here, as my question suggested, and I think the court's question cemented. We have no way of knowing here whether this statement related back as far as June 20 or as recently as October 10, which itself would have been about a week or so, perhaps more after the incident. Mr. Morris cited Kluver, Kluever versus Evangelical Reformed Emmanuel Congregation, and it's true that there was an 8 to 10 week period of time at issue in Kluver, but the facts of Kluver are worth noting. The statement was made while the declarant was in a hospital bed recovering from a bad fall, and the court noted in accepting the 8 to 10 week time period that the statement was one of his few islets, islets, of memory in the time period since his fall. So there was sort of a compression, or at least an amorphous quality of time for the declarant there, kind of a foreshortening, if you will, of recency given the injuries that the man had sustained and was recovering from in the hospital bed. So I don't know in the end that Kluver gives a whole lot of help here. I do concede that we don't need the immediacy or quite the recency that an excited utterance would require for the reasons I explained concerning the underlying rationale for these hearsay exceptions. All right, that will conclude our Q&A practice.